especially for women who are overdoers. There's nothing I have to do to be 100% lovable, valuable, and worthy. I already am. I don't need to accomplish anything. I don't need to parent a certain way or show up perfect to be that. I am that.
Welcome to Pebbles of Light, where we highlight the everyday people who bring hope, comfort, and light to others. I'm your host, Anne Maxson, sharing meaningful stories to help you find light in your journey. If the messages shared resonate with you, please follow, share, or support the podcast through Patreon to help keep the mic on and spread the light even farther. I am grateful to have Diane McDowell here today. Diane's work helps us understand why connection can feel so hard, even when we're doing everything quote unquote right. Through a brain-to-heart approach, she teaches how safety, not effort, helps us truly connect with others. Diane, thanks so much for being here. Please take a moment to just introduce yourself.
Thank you, Anne. I am so excited to be here. I'm Diane. I am a therapist of 25 plus years, and I have moved into the coaching arena. I started what I found was that so many of us have the skills. We are taught skills like communication and the love languages and all these different skills. But what happens is we can't access them. We can't use them when we need them. And so I use myself as the example because what I found is as a therapist, I'm trained in all these things. But in my marriage, I've been married 23, almost 24 years. I found myself getting hijacked. I found myself losing my cool, saying hurtful things, knowing that wasn't who I wanted to be, but I didn't know how to control it. I didn't know how to use the skills that I taught other people and the ones I knew how to use because my brain would get hijacked. So it became a study on myself to understand what's happening that I lose it and I say things that I would never say to anyone else, to my partner.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think sometimes that can be so hard because we can be the harshest to ourselves as well as those in our home, right? It's interesting for me. So I have two boys, but I'm an only child. And so growing up and always kind of wanting a sibling, like I'm like, you guys should just like be the best of friends all the time. And of course that isn't true. But I feel like the sibling dynamic of that is also interesting because you know they're going to love you no matter what. And so sometimes you take that frustration out on them, even though they don't deserve it. Even from the idea of sometimes if you're busy at work or you have a lot going on, you get home and you kind of give your family your leftovers, as a lack of a better term. Like you're kind of emotionally spent from work and you get home and your family just gets your leftovers. Whereas that shouldn't necessarily be how it goes. What are your thoughts on that and how to balance that so that we make sure we're giving our families the best of ourselves?
This is so important because what often happens is we deplete ourselves at work and don't even think about, I need energy. So as a therapist, I used to work in a mental health emergency room for 19 years, and I would give everything there. And then I would come home and I would feel so depleted, but yet I had two kids to take care of and I had a husband who needed my attention. So one of the things I had to start literally doing is saying, I cannot give everything. I can only give a percentage and I have to keep a percentage. So I started using the example of 20%. I have to keep 20% in reserve to take care of myself and my family when I get home. I can't come home completely depleted and want to crawl into bed because then I have nothing to build relationship at home with.
That makes sense. And did you incorporate anything where, like, once you got home, once you got in the door, or even before you walked through the door, to just have some sort of thought or just a way to separate workday from home?
I didn't. And what I actually did was I often told my kids, like if I had a really hard day, I had a really sad case, I would tell my kids, my mommy might cry tonight. Mommy might be having a hard time tonight. And that's okay. Everything is okay. I've got it. Like I had a case that really rocked my world for a little while because the same age as my daughter and somebody's child had died. And I told my kids, you're going to see me crying. Mommy's really struggling. And that's okay. Mommy's fine. It'll be it. So I didn't separate the two. I didn't feel like I could. I, I, I'm sensitive, but I'm a compassionate person both places, and I didn't feel like I could shut the door. I know some people do. I didn't.
Yeah, that makes sense. And I've been impressed. So I've had similar situations with my kids where there's something going on or I'm having a hard day or something. And even when they were pretty young, like 3 and 5, I could tell them, "Hey, I've had a rough day and my temper's a little short and I'm sorry, but I'm going to do my best." And how understanding they are of that. And even from the perspective of, "Oh, like, can we help, with dinner or dishes or whatever?" More so than they would in a regular situation. But their understanding of being able to support and help and how that openness led to more openness from them as well.
Yeah. And I think by doing that, we're teaching our kids, we're showing our kids, mommy and daddy have a hard time too. And this is how we regulate. This is how we create nervous system safety. This is how we take care of ourselves. I'm not, for me, I'm not a big fan of saying work stays at work and home stays at home because the reality is our brain is the same brain. And no matter where we are, we take the other experience with us. So to me, it's like it's better. Like I work from home. The kids are downstairs. I'm upstairs. They're home from school on a snow day today. So incorporating that into this is life, mommy has life outside of you guys. And how do we juggle them both? How do we balance that together?
Yeah, exactly. And when you were talking about nervous system, it got me thinking about, some of the things that you said about that idea of how like thinking doesn't necessarily heal the nervous system because the logical side of it doesn't necessarily connect with the emotional side. And so what happens there when we think we understand ourselves so clearly, but we still get stuck in these same emotional patterns?
So a lot of times we as humans, we like to stay in our brain. We like to think. We have 60 to 80,000 thoughts a day, and we love to think and rethink. And so a lot of times we will think that thinking is going to solve the problem, and it doesn't. Nervous system safety comes from the sensations in our body by creating a sense of safety in our body, not thinking about it. So many of us will think we can think our way out of feeling unsafe in our body. That does not work. And so a lot of really high achievers, high accomplished people who can think their way through things at work or problem solve things. Emotional safety is not a problem to solve. It's something to experience. So the difference our body knows is when you think about it, you know what it looks like logically, but you're not experiencing it. We have to learn how to feel it in our body. What does my body feel like? Where do I feel it? Does it move? Does it change? How do I create a sense of safety and not look for someone outside of me, my job, controlling other
Mhm.
people, controlling things to create that sense of safety for us?
That makes sense. And so do you know if there's some like I'm a science nerd, right? So is they're kind of like the science nerd side of it of the neurotransmitters. And in my mind, it's like epinephrine versus oxytocin are
Mhm.
kind of the two sides of that.
Yeah. So one of the things we can do is we can start noticing what is happening in our body. So when we go to our brain, instead take it to your body. Notice, where do I feel the tension? Where do I feel the heat? Start Yes, we have cortisol that shoots into our body and we have hormones that change how we feel, but we can change that by becoming present with our body. So, really starting to notice, what does hijack feel like when I start seeing the world as dangerous, when I start seeing my partner or the people I love, and I start essentially what happens is we go into fight, flight, or freeze. Our brain starts seeing the world as dangerous. And we need to get back into our body and out of our brain. So, doing that, like learning how to notice, oh, I'm hijacked, and become the wise watcher of what's happening. So, I literally picture myself outside of myself to the right. I have my hand up here, but to the right, I picture myself outside of myself, watching myself. I have trained myself to do this to become the watcher because so many of us think we are very insightful, but we're not. We can see other people, we notice what other people are doing, but a lot of times we miss it with us. So becoming the wise watcher and noticing what's happening in the outside of us so that we can bring it back to our body and start calming it and soothing it and recognizing what it needs. And literally asking yourself, what does my body need right now?
Yeah, exactly. I feel like there's probably some breathing involved with this, right?
Always breathing.
Yeah.
If you think about breathing as the thing we cannot live without. So if you're feeling hijacked, if you are feeling like the world is against you or feels unsafe or unsteady, breathing will help bring that, slow it down, and bring it back to grounded much quicker than anything else.
Yeah. And when you were talking about how we can notice it in others more than we notice in ourselves, that reminded me of another thing that you've talked about a little bit about the idea of people pleasing, being self betrayal. And as a chronic people pleaser, I'd love to hear more about your thoughts on that and how sometimes people pleasing just kind of erodes our own sense of dignity rather than demonstrating true compassion to ourselves and others.
Yeah. So people pleasing, and I've had clients that struggle with this, so I'm going to try to make it clear. People pleasing is doing things for others at the expense of yourself. So there's nothing wrong with being kind and compassionate and supportive and listening to others. It's when it becomes at the expense of ourselves. When I am doing it, when I'm listening to your problems, when all I need to do is actually take care of myself. When I am taking care of your emotional needs, but I have nothing left to give and I'm depleted completely. So when we are doing it at the expense of ourselves, if I'm telling you I want to do something and I really don't, it's literally lying. And we
Yeah.
chip away at our relationship with ourselves when we do that. So there's a big difference between being kind, supportive, and helpful. I'm all in for that. But when it is at the expense of ourselves, that is people pleasing. And when we people please, we are lying to ourselves and we are lying to them. Because we are saying, yes, I want to go to bowling, but I really don't want to go bowling. So I'm lying. And as I lie to myself, I chip away at my relationship with myself. And so a lot of times people will say, I just feel lost. Was because we slowly chipped away. It doesn't happen right away. We slowly chip away at our relationship with ourselves to make other people happy. And so it literally is breaking us down when we people please. So one of the things we can do is learn how to hold space for other people without jumping in the pit with them. We can
Hmm.
listen to their problems, but not make them our problems and take them on. It may be that sometimes we have to say, hey, I really want to be there for you, but right now I need to take care of myself. I can listen to you in 20 minutes. I can give you a call back later. But we've got to be able to be in touch with ourselves and grounded with ourselves to even know what we need.
Yeah, exactly. And that's a great insight too about just, kind of taking a moment to recognize what you need and to make sure you're protecting that and keeping that safe because I feel like sometimes I'm not very good at that. And the other component too is recognizing that every yes is a no to something else, right?
Yeah. Yeah. And those yeses might be in line with what you want to do. What I teach my clients a lot of times is don't say yes to anything. If we are chronic people
Mhm.
pleasers and we
Mhm.
want to say yes in the moment to everything and everybody, is to never say yes to anything until you retrain your brain. So
Mm.
everything you say, let me check my calendar and get back with you. Let me check because you're training your brain to not say yes to everything. And then you go and you look and you go, is this something I really value? Is this really, am I going to get my return on my investment in this area? So learning to say no or let me get back to you to everything until you have trained your brain to check in with yourself before you say yes.
It- And I think kind of just thinking about this people pleasing side of things, a lot of times women especially just kind of put on a performance emotionally. They manage others' feelings, they hold all the things together, they stay good. People are like, "Oh, how are you? I'm fine." Even my kids know. They're like, "Oh, if mom says she's fine, she is not fine." So what does it look like to kind of move on from that performance version of emotional fineness into actual emotional goodness?
Speaking your truth. So I'm going to give a quick story here. I got
Yeah.
pulled over by a cop just a couple weeks ago, right after the beginning of the new year. And I had turned in a non-turn school zone thing. And he just said, do you know why I put, he said, how are you today? Other than me pulling you over. And I said, not good, but that's okay. I don't need to explain to the police officer my day, but I needed to be true to myself and not say fine when I
Yeah.
wasn't fine. So learning how to just speak your truth, even though they don't really care. The police officer didn't really want to know how my day was. That wasn't the point. The point was when I hide myself, I learned to hide myself over and over and over again. So speaking my truth is important. And one of the things I really focus on with new clients is even when something is said and it hurts, just acknowledge it hurts. The goal isn't to change their behavior and try to tell them not to say that. The goal is just to be like, ouch, that hurt. Because you're speaking your truth. You're learning how to not hide you anymore.
Yeah. And kind of along with that idea of communication, like sometimes we're like just taught that better communication is will fix all of our relationships, but sometimes that belief kind of falls short. And so what's really happening beneath those words when that connection breaks down, even though we're trying to speak all of the things, but sometimes we still miss that connection, especially with those within our own home.
Yeah. So, communication tips are great. We need to learn how to reflect back and listen to others and reflect back what they're saying. But here's the thing, when our brain is hijacked, when we don't, our nervous system doesn't feel safe. When we communicate, it doesn't land. Because even if I say my words with a very soft tone, underneath there's this pressure, there's this urgency. So, what I teach people is when you have this sense of pressure or urgency in your body, what you actually need to go do is go ground yourself. Go ask yourself, what is it that I'm needing? So, I teach come from love only. If you can't come from love, don't do it. So, go back and take care of yourself. I call it the returned self. Get back to you before you have that communication. If you communicate and you are not feeling grounded, it doesn't matter how great you communicate, it's not going to land well because there's this pressure and urgency and this need to make them understand. So one of the things I teach is it's not our job to make them understand or to change their behavior. It's our job to speak our truth. So when I'm grounded, I'm just speaking my truth. I don't need to prove to you anything. But when I'm not, I've got this intensity that it will come out in my words, even if I don't think it does. It also comes out in the micro expressions around our mouth and our eyes.
Oh, interesting. And that kind of ties in with that idea of like I've talked a lot about the idea of faith in the effort and not in the outcome. In the
Yes.
effort of trying to connect, and you can't control what they're going to do. They have their own agency to do what they
Yeah.
want with that type of situation. But as long as you are putting your heart into what you're expressing and that effort, then it's up to them, and you can't control that.
Yeah. One of the things that I focus on, like you said, but a different wording, is know and like your reason. Know and like your reason for what you're saying and doing before you do it, because then you're like, it's to honor me, it's not to manipulate them. When we try to change someone else's behavior, that's manipulation.
Yep.
So we want to make sure that everything we're doing is to honor and speak our own truth. It's not to get a certain result from them.
Yeah. So how does that work right now? The world is a little polarized with people's belief systems and stuff like that. In what ways can this type of connection really help build bridges as opposed to people just separating further and further and refusing to see each other's opinions?
So I'm a fan of permission granted. And by
Hmm.
that, what I mean is I give you permission to think and feel and say whatever you want to think, feel, and say. And I give me permission to think, feel, and say whatever I need to think, feel, and say. I'm no longer going to try to control what you think. And when we give the other person permission to be them, then we can get curious, true curious questions. A lot of times we say they're curious questions, but they're really judgmental. We'll be like, do you really believe that? Or can you really see that happening? And we ask a question, but it's really not a curious question. It's a judgy question. So when we can give the other person permission and us permission to believe whatever we want and say whatever we want, we stop trying to judge them and we can get really curious. Help me understand. I'm wondering what that's like for you.
Yeah, that I have friends whose viewpoints are very different from mine. And sometimes I'll tell them, be like, I love you no matter what. Like, I believe you're a child of God and you have a divine purpose, and I love you no matter what your choices are. But I'm curious, can you tell me why you chose this? And not with the intent to try and change or adjust or make them
Yeah.
do something different.
Yeah. I would say be careful with why. Why can put us in defensive because it's
Hmm.
like why did you do that? So I like your question and I think that's great. Like help me but I would phrase it a little more like help me understand. I'm curious about this because
Yeah.
why tends to get us bristling a
Yeah.
little.
That's true. Interesting.
Think acknowledging that we're a child of God. What I teach clients if they aren't particularly spiritual is we're all 100% lovable, valuable, and worthy. And that is not negotiable. We're human. We are given that when we are born. We're 100% lovable, valuable, and worthy. And that doesn't change based off of how someone else sees us.
Yeah,
Just because
exactly.
somebody else can't see that in us doesn't change our value.
Yeah. And I remember talking about that previously with you a little bit when we met a while back, and how it's important to see that of ourselves as well. So
Yeah.
what are your thoughts on those days where you may not be feeling lovable, valuable, or worthy? How do you connect that to yourself?
You practice it. I think one of the best things that we can do. So I teach a lot of grounding stuff, and one of them is having power sentences that you practice throughout the day. I teach 5 times a day, when you wake up, breakfast, lunch, dinner, and you habit stack them with those things and bedtime. Our brain is very easily influenced from going from alpha to beta and beta to alpha, awake to sleep and asleep to wake. When we're in that state, if you pray, then praying about it. If you don't, then just telling your brain, like, I'm 100% lovable, no matter what anyone else thinks. And really ingraining that, you are creating a new neuropath. As you sleep at night, your brain covers up the old neuropaths and creates new ones. So the more you practice this belief, I am always 100% lovable, valuable, and worthy. What others see in me or what I think about me doesn't change that. And you practice that, then your brain will start to create that neuropath. And one day you'll start to step into it. You'll be like, I feel it. It may only be for a second, but you'll step into that. I call it going into the dressing room. You go into the emotions dressing room, you try on new thoughts. And one day you'll be like, this feels right. It may only last a second, but each time you practice it, it'll last longer and longer. But you start creating a relationship with the belief that I'm 100% lovable, valuable, and worthy all the time. And what others think of me doesn't change that.
I love that. One thing that I've done, and it probably depends on it's probably individualized to what someone believes of God. But one thing I've done is I've prayed to ask God, how do you feel about me? And it's always
Yeah.
lovable, valuable, and worthy, right?
Yeah. Yeah. And so reminding yourself, if you believe in God or whatever you choose to believe in, like, I am created this way. There's nothing I have to do. And especially for women who are overdoers, there's nothing I have to do to be 100% lovable, valuable, and worthy. I already am. I don't need to accomplish anything. I don't need to parent a certain way or show up perfect to be that. I am that.
Yeah. Which sometimes we struggle a bit, you know. What are your thoughts as far as how social media plays into all of this as well?
Whew. That's such a tough one. I got to tell you, I have had so many clients who have cut out social media and they can see it so much quicker. Their lovable, valuable, and worthiness.
Mhm.
Within days of cutting it out, they can believe it so much easier. When you see other people and you're comparing with other people, I mean, comparison steals our joy. It just does.
Yep.
And so it's really hard to not see other people's and social media, what they're accomplishing, what they appear to be accomplishing, and not feel like we should be doing something different. So if you're going to be looking at social media, really be reminding yourself before and after you do it, my value didn't change. My value is not any less because of what someone else is doing or not doing.
One final question. One of the purposes of Pebbles of Light is to honor the relationships that quite quietly brighten our path and help us find our way. You've shared many ways that you've lit the paths of others, clients and friends and family. But could you tell us about one or two people who have placed a pebble of light in your path when you needed it and how it changed you?
I have a best friend, and one of the things years ago, I was in an unhealthy relationship. And one of the things she said to me was, when you're ready, you'll leave. And that was so empowering. That was so life changing because she believed in me and my ability to leave when it was time. That gave me the belief to believe in me. I was ready to defend myself, and she was like, totally just believed that I would leave when it was time. And I think that it was such a game changer for me to see how someone else could believe in me. And it gave me the belief. I also had a teacher in high school. I have dyslexia and I really struggled in high school. And I had a special ed teacher who really took an interest in me and helped me get through school. And she was, I've always wanted to go back and find her. I don't imagine she's still around, but she was somebody who lit my way.
Awesome. I love teachers. Growing up, I just had the most amazing teachers throughout, from elementary all the way up through high school, and they were so impactful. I don't know if they knew the impact that they had.
Yeah, yeah.
They're
I would like
awesome.
to someday go back. Like, I also had a I had voc rehab because of my dyslexia, and I had a voc rehab counselor who took me under her wings after my high school teacher did, and she was amazing, and I've always thought, I need to go find Mrs. Marksberry and tell her what she did for my life.
That's awesome. All right. If listeners want to learn more about what you do, where can they find you?
They can find me at emotionalsafetyco.com. Again, that's emotionalsafetyco.com. And on there, there's a free resource, and you can take a brain hijack quiz and learn how to create your own emotional safety.
Awesome. And I'll have those links in the show notes as well. Thank you, Diane, so much for being here.
Thank you. This was wonderful.
As we close, I invite you to reflect on this episode's pebble. Where in your life do you need a little more emotional safety? Not from others necessarily, but from within yourself. Maybe it begins with one honest breath, one truthful pause, or one gentle reminder that you are already lovable, valuable, and worthy. If this episode resonated with you, please share it with someone who might need a pebble of light. And don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss future conversations. Thanks so much for being here. Thank you for tuning in. My hope is that something helped you feel seen, encouraged, or inspired to bring light to someone else. If a name or moment stood out, don't let it pass. Reach out, express gratitude, or take that next step. You can connect with me anytime on socials at Pebbles of Light or at annemaxson.com. If this episode was meaningful for you, please follow the show, rate or review, and share it with someone who might need a lift today. And if you want to go a step farther, you can support the show on Patreon. See you next time.